Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. I trust you've had a good week and looking forward to the weekend. Let me start with my macro thoughts. Eric Scott Huntsader tweeted yesterday, today's story in a chart, net change in top 70 most active futures contracts. Red line is VIX futures, as VIX spiked higher. That's the volatility measurement. It's not difficult to see why when you see what's been going on in the markets, but the diagram gives you a great view of what actually transpired. Home thoughts were all missing the south coast, the sea breeze, the beach, the fresh crab and lobster that Zaidi, the chef, was so proficient at making, the coconuts that Omari would cut for us at 11 and then again at 5. I'll put up a photograph of Hannah and her American cousins Mikhail and Alia on the boat in Diani. New scientist, chemicals of life found in water that last saw the light of day 1.5 billion years ago. Worth thinking about, isn't it? July was the Earth's hottest month on record, as you can see from this diagram, and that took me back to the Weather Project by Olafur Eliasson, and I like this photograph I found on Flickr of the installation in the Tate Modern. Still sticking with George Santayana, I liked this. The difficult is that which can be done immediately, the impossible that which takes a little longer. That took me to impossible is nothing. Muhammad Ali, impossible is just a big word thrown around by small men who find it easier to live in the world they've been given than to explore the power they have to change it. Impossible is not a fact, it's an opinion. Impossible is not a declaration, it's a dare. Impossible is potential, impossible is temporary, impossible is nothing. Political reflections. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un ordered his troops onto a war footing from 5 p.m. on Friday after his government issued an ultimatum to Seoul to halt anti-Pyongyang propaganda broadcasts by Saturday afternoon or face military action. I'll put up a photograph of the South Korean war room that Al Jazeera tweeted under the headline, North Korean leader orders army units to enter wartime state. And it takes me back to something I wrote on the 29th of November 2010, when I said, far away in distant lands lies the Hermit kingdom. They all have had tiny little hands like the elves and the shoemaker. And I was being a bit tongue-in-cheek, but wondering whether it's a tiny hands complex. RT tweeted, North Korea threatens to invade the US, use its latest weapons, which are unknown to the world. I liked the photograph more than anything. And then Sato Gudino tweeted, Pyongyang de noche. And makes me wonder, because it looks quite visually enticing. Alexis Tsipras tweeted, in these difficult times we must hold on to and champion what matters most, our country and democracy. Thank you, Greece. He's called a snap election. You know, I referred to this article yesterday. This is Andrew Korybiko, Hybrid Wars, the Indirect Adaptive Approach to Regime Change. He starts by quoting, supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. Over 2,000 years ago, the ancient Chinese military strategist realized that indirect warfare is one of the most efficient ways of fighting an enemy. It allows an opponent to defeat their adversary without directly engaging them, thereby saving themselves the resources that would have to be expended in a direct confrontation. Attacking an enemy indirectly can also bog them down and put them on the defensive, thereby making them vulnerable to other forms of attack. It also carries with it a certain opportunity cost for the defending side, since the time and resources that they spend in dealing with the indirect attack could potentially have been put to better use elsewhere. Besides the tactical advantages, there are also strategic ones as well. There may be certain constraints, e.g. alliances, military parity, etc., that prevent one entity from directly launching hostilities against another. In this case, indirect warfare is the only option to destabilize the other. This book focuses on the new strategy of indirect warfare that the US has demonstrated during the Syrian and Ukrainian crises. Both situations left many wondering, and this is delightful, whether they were observing the export of color revolutions to the Middle East, or the arrival of the Arab Spring in Europe, or perhaps some kind of Frankenstein hybrid. And saying that this model begins by deploying a color revolution as a soft coup attempt, only to be followed up by a hard coup, unconventional war, if the first plan fails. Unconventional warfare is defined in this book as any type of non-conventional force engaged in largely asymmetrical combat against a traditional adversary. Taken together in a two-pronged approach, color revolutions and unconventional warfare represent the two components that form the theory of hybrid war, the new method of indirect warfare being waged by the US. And this goes back to my point yesterday about information warfare. Psychological operations may become the dominant operational and strategic weapon in the form of media information intervention. A major target will be the enemy population's support of its government and the war. Television news may become a more powerful operational weapon than armored divisions. I attempted to look at this when I presented at Mindspeak in January. That link is up on the website, and I just read you my comments that I put. I said it was about the grand geopolitical master, Vladimir Putin, Barack Obama, 21st century, oil warfare specialist, crude oil. I was talking about Europe being off balance, talking about Je suis Charlie versus the Baga killings, Adam Curtis, Andy Warhol, an arrhythmic world, MH370, Korkov, Ukraine, images contaminate us like a virus, ISIS, oil warfare, Iran, Lagarde, Africa rising, the mobile phone. I also touched on the fact that the street now has a voice in Africa, something it didn't have post-Ouagadougou. The Indian Ocean economy, which I consider very central. Do take a look at it because I touched on a lot of these points. On the 12th of January, I described President Obama as the oil warfare specialist. And I said he's wrestled crude to below $50 and maybe even below 40 today, and with that effected a chokehold on Vladimir Putin. And I said to Vladimir, the geopolitical grand master, did not see the oil warfare specialist Obama coming. Holger tweeted this morning, Russian ruble in free fall as crude oil prices hit fresh multi-year lows. Kissinger is being quoted on RT America saying breaking Russia has become an objective for the US. He's probably right. And I retweeted, I said, put oil at $20 and Russia will be a puff of smoke. Moving on, the guy in the yellow t-shirt, long shorts, unruly black hair, thick dark glasses, arrived at the Erewhoni shrine in a tuk-tuk. No one may have noticed him, just another nondescript backpacker in one of the busiest crossroads in Asia. He may have come to pay his respects to the golden statue of Brahma at the center of the shrine and gaze on the Thai dancers and musicians in the background. He sits on a bench, then slowly he gets rid of a black backpack. He stands up, checks his mobile, then he walks away, stops, actually seems to be calling someone on his mobile. Then he finally leaves Erewhoni, hitting the crowded intersection, clutching a white plastic bag, but always checking his phone. He may or may not have known all his movements were being tracked by multiple CCTV cameras. A few minutes after he disappears from their sights and allegedly takes a motorbike taxi, he enters with a lethal bang the wilderness of mirrors that is contemporary Thailand. African Union Peace tweeted, AU High Representative for South Sudan meets with government chief negotiator Niall Deng in Juba. We had lunch some time ago in the Kapinski when times were not as they are now. International markets, Japan cautions China against frequent yuan manipulation, and in a way the devaluation of the yuan is putting a lot of pressure on the yen, strengthening the yen, and I think it's strengthened the euro as well. Cakes in Market Manufacturing Index showed activity in China's factory sector shrank at its fastest pace in almost 6.5 years in August as domestic and export demand dwindled. And then have a look at the graph that Holgertz tweeted. China doom in one chart, factory gauge, August PMI drops to lowest levels since March 2009. Markets are pricing in the worst right now, said Harold van der Linde. People are saying this is risk and we step away from the market. Shanghai Composite Index fell to its lowest closing level in 5 months. I'll put up a chart that Richard Bravo put up, and I'll also put up an image of the Shanghai stock market. Let's move on to the currency markets, where the euro got nearly to 113, but it's now slipped back to 112.59. Dollar index is 95.46 when I had a look last. Dollar yen 122.92. The pound 157.15. Aussie got sold off early in the morning. It's now at 0.7324. Indian rupee 65.885. South Korean won. And we need to keep an eye on that, obviously, given the activity on the border. It's last trading at 11.9475. The Rial 344.56. Egyptian pound 782.13, and the rand back below 13 at 12.9704. Let me put up a 3-month chart of the dollar index, and I think if the perception takes hold that the Fed is not ready to hike in September, this could suffer a deeper setback. Euro dollar, let me put up a 3-month chart of that. This could get as high as 114.50. The yuan devaluation is rallying the euro now. Interesting piece on Bloomberg Currencies that may follow the tenge in tumble triggered by China, talking about the Rial, the forward contract used by traders to bet on future price moves fell to the weakest since 2003 on the Saudi Rial. Turkmenistan's Manat, oil exporting nation, close economic ties to Russia, devalued its currency by 19% in January. Tajikistan's Samoni, Armenia's Dram, Kyrgyzstan's Som, so these are all the stands. Egyptian pound, traders are betting the pound will weaken about 22% in a year, so it's making a big sell-off. Turkey's lira, one of the world's worst performing currencies since China's devaluation on August 11. Nigeria's naira, I'll get to this in a minute. Ghana's cedi, Zambia's kwacha, and Malaysia's ringgit. I'll put up a 1-year chart of the South Korean won, and obviously this is now very beholden to what happens at the border. Commodity markets, gold got as high as 11.62, now trading at 11.52. And I did say previously that I thought the rebound could carry it all the way to 11.50. Let's see how we behave now, but obviously we've had geopolitical risks rise, equity sell-off, and everyone's fled back into gold. I think it's had its best week for a year. Oil futures fell as much as 1.6% in New York, setting the scene for an 8th weekly drop. US pumped crude in July at the fastest pace for the month since at least 1920. Oil has slumped more than 30% since this year's closing peak in June. I think it's going to slide even further. WTI for October delivery lost as much as 67 cents to $40.65 a barrel. The volume of all futures traded was about 26% above the 100-day moving average. Prices have fallen 5.4% this week alone. Mark Barton tweeted, back to 1986, oil drops for an 8th week, the longest losing streak for almost 3 decades. I'll put up a crude oil chart and you can see what we're talking about. Holger again, Saudi Arabia may run budget deficit at 20% of GDP in 2015 because of low oil. It sold a chunk of FX reserves, and have a look at the diagram is included by Pierpont. Dryness threatens Ivorian cocoa as rain brings minimal relief. Cocoa prices have been remarkably resilient when compared to other commodity prices. There is upside risk in the market. Goetler said by phone, you can't switch to another commodity. If you need cocoa, you either use it or you don't use anything. Holger again, broken BRICS. China's exports have collapsed to both Brazil minus 17.8% year on year and Russia minus 35.3% year on year. The image is again Pierpont. Sub-Saharan Africa, Pierre Nkurunziza, this is a tweet by Padraish, who tweets regularly from Burundi. Pierre Nkurunziza has now been sworn in for his hotly contested 3rd term. Question now is, what next for Burundi? That's the point. Senior military officials knew nothing about the ceremony until this morning, but were asked to appear today in full parade uniform. In a statement from the presidency, Nkurunziza took the oath for a new term of 5 years. The ceremony was only announced a few hours in advance. Senior military officials knew nothing. There is no security in Burundi in general, so maybe the officials thought that if they kept the calendar as it was, bad things could happen. Maybe that is why they changed it at the last minute. The ambassadors of Egypt and Russia were there apparently, as was President Dos Santos. That's according to Sonia Rolli. South African oil share fell 0.76% yesterday, and is now negative again for the year, which is the first time since the 21st of January this year. Dollar rand, I'll put up a 6-month chart. I've been calling for 14 for a while. I think we're going to get there. Reuters reported yesterday a big blast near Cairo's State Security Building, wounded 29. And just to speak to that, this spike in the insurgency has tanked the EGX 30, which is now down 19.65% year to date. The Economist has a very interesting article about Nigeria. Unless there are signs of effective governance from Mr. Buhari soon, the surge of confidence that followed his election may disappear. We haven't seen any reason then another report on Bloomberg, Nigeria vows to fight speculators betting on Naira devaluation. We haven't seen any reason so far to institute a change in the foreign exchange policies. This is a spokesman for the Central Bank of Nigeria. The preponderance of foreign currency in the country has led to speculative attacks on the Naira. People who have done it in the hope will be hurt. Currency, which has remained below 200 since mid-May, closed at 199.05. 6-month Naira forwards jumped 2.6% to 235, the highest since July 27th. The volume of speculation on our currency is huge, but once it comes as a result of speculation, we'll fight back. I said they are popping quaaludes, and I referred to my comment about Emefiele having his finger in the dike, and I think he'll eventually be overwhelmed by a tsunami. Nigerian oil share closed down 0.98%. It's down 14.167% year to date. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index is down 5.04% year to date at 6-month lows. This is extraordinary. The UAE has closed its Nairobi embassy amid falling crude. I know the ambassador well. They've got a fabulous embassy just near the Savannah. So this is really a mind-boggling decision here. Nation FM quotes Charles Opel: smells, looks, sounds, and walks like impunity, talking about the MPs who are seeking to have immunity from any future prosecution. It's just so ridiculous, it really is. Standard Chartered reported first half profit after tax fell 36%. Loans and advances to customers declined 6.4%. But the big item which has caused this decline in earnings was that, previous year they booked 1.84 billion shillings of other income. This was property sales. That was not repeated this time. And if you strip that out, then the performance was significantly better. Profit before tax down 30.9%, EPS down 36%. They were lapping 2014 results where they booked other income, property sales 1.84 billion. This has distorted these results. It remains a strong franchise. The Kenya Ports Authority plans to borrow 34 billion shillings to finance the expansion of the East Africa's biggest harbour. Will begin construction in 2018 on the second phase of a plan to enable the facility to handle more and bigger ships, including Panamax vessels. Dua said by phone. Kenya's exports to Dar have dropped 30% in the first half of the year. That's pretty dramatic. Data from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics shows that the country sold goods worth 12.2 billion shillings to Tanzania in the first 6 months to June, down from 17.7 billion in a similar period last year. Partly linked to industrialization in Tanzania and the fact that the currencies have fallen very dramatically. Nairobi all-share retreated 0.39% yesterday. It's down 7.655% year-to-date and sits 3.15% above its 2015 closing low, reached on the 5th of this month. NSE 20s down 13.35% this year and sits 2.61% above its 2015 closing low, reached on the 5th of this month. As I said, both indices eased yesterday, but equity turnover soared to 3.686 billion as Equity Group transacted 2.21% of its shares at the bourse. And as I said previously, these are salad days for the Nairobi Securities Exchange if you just go by volume. Safaricom firmed 0.66% to close at 15.10. Buyers outpacing sellers by a ratio of 4.5 to 1, and this will remain so and might get more extreme as we approach the record date. I think furthermore it's rebounded 8.633% since the 6th of August, and I think that's the market's discounting the M-Pesa hullabaloo as plain untenable. Kenya Airways, which had rallied 16.39% since 5th August when it closed at a multi-year low, throttled back 1.64%. Banks, I&M, reported results where they reported a 19.66% expansion in total assets. First half profit after tax accelerated 31.39%. Trades on a trading PE of 8.48 looks expensive, rallied 4.55% yesterday. Let me leave you with Equity Group just to go through what happened. Traded 2.21% of its shares, 81.896 million. Closed 1.84% easier at 40. We've seen some seriously heavy-duty volume action of late, in particular as Helios LLP harvested their stake. Equity Group sits 8.1% above its 2015 closing low from the 3rd of this month, and reported a first half profit after tax acceleration of 11.846%. BAT was low, ticked 5.91% yesterday. It seems to be trading lower again today. Look, I'm really grateful that you take time to stop by. I wish you a wonderful weekend, and let's pick this up on Monday. But definitely we're in volatile markets, and we need to be alert to what's going on. So thank you.